Despite telling their subordinates that they would taste the girl in their arms, they couldn't see the look of nostalgia and pity in Julio's eyes from behind. The girl in his arms was too weak now, perhaps the journey to find her brother had made her too tired, plus the last battle had left her wounded. Gently placing Lihanna on the bed, Julio lightly stroked Lihanna's face and neck, smiling, "A girl needs a lot of time to explore." Lihanna, in a daze, remembers a scene from the past, when she walks past a row of cells, a dangerous criminal she catches screams, "Bastards, I won't let it go." Terrifying dark images flashed through her dreams, awakening her. It turned out to be just a nightmare. Lihanna looked around, finding herself in a rather luxurious and tidy room. She looked back at her body. It seemed that they did not swear to abuse her, but only gave her sleeping pills and even bandaged her wounds. Lihanna remembers the dream just now. It made her shudder a little, that criminal she caught while working on Valentine's team. During the 7 months that he was in prison, his family members were killed by the hatred embankments he used to have, the whole thing. Lihanna is not afraid of his threats at first, but later she worries about Dui's safety. When she recently heard that he had been murdered in some sort of revenge plot by a criminal group, it was actually the first time she was relieved to hear of a person's death. Lihanna shuddered and put all this aside, trying to get out of bed. She needed to save her brother at the earliest, praying to God for Dui to be safe. First, she needed to fill her empty stomach. She was so hungry and tired. Then maybe she needs to convince Parenti to get help from him. Lihanna walked to the bed. Her clothes were stripped off. What she was wearing was Parenti's shirt that she had asked him to take off. "How perverted," muttered Lihanna. She crept out the door, thinking about why he let her live. She was startled by the subordinate she had strangled earlier with rope standing outside the guard door. "I'm sorry." Lihanna raised her hands to her head, using her most honest face to show her goodwill. At least they didn't torture her, but treated her. Lihanna's combat experience makes it easy to play a cute girl. Perhaps sympathizing with him will give her some useful information. "I'm very sorry for what happened. Maybe you shouldn't be pointing a gun at me." Parenti's subordinates said coldly, "Stop acting." But Lihanna's answer surprised him, "Give me something to eat. I haven't eaten anything all day." This cuteness of Lihanna, even if it is false, is enough to make people melt all defenses. He replied, "I don't have much to eat." Lihanna said, "I could eat anything." He led Lihanna to the kitchen, wondering as he walked about the girl behind him, was she an assassin, or a Korean spy? "I used to work in South Korea's special forces, but now I'm unemployed." "Baekso, I know this slang word in Korean, that's the word for unemployment that SAE taught me," Parenti's subordinate said as he secretly adjusted the small microphone on his collar, and the conversation reached PRT's ears to the fullest. "SAE?" Lihanna wonders about the name, and is explained by the man in front of her that it is a girl who looks a lot like her. The summer of the tropics is very frequent, with heavy rain. Outside a few cars are returning to the villa. In the dining room, Lihanna expresses interest in the food that the stranger has just made for him. The food he made is really surprising, but he only knows how to fight. Lihanna tries to get information from him. Who is SAE? As a member of the organization? Or Parenti's mistress? The man propped his hand on the table, seriously saying, "It's just one of our associates. And don't mention this name in front of Julio, don't him off. He only spared you temporarily." Lihanna, of course, obeyed and changed the subject to ask for her brother's information. The man said Parenti doesn't usually detain anyone, but would kill him to avoid wasting time, so it was probably those who impersonated Parenti. And the imposters were untraceable, and Parenti paid no attention to them. So Parenti kept her not for the purpose she promised? Lihanna reasoned. Taejun once told her when she threatened him, that the intelligence agency had evidence of Dui's betrayal of the organization, so she needed to stay here to find evidence to prove her brother's innocence, and find some information to save him. Lihanna quickly finished her meal and sat, thinking about the tangled information she had been receiving since this happened. It was too complicated. She and the man seemed able to converse in the most peaceful and friendly way, a scene that was different from the crime confrontation experiences she had. In the past, she would only get hurt and fight them, not thinking that one day mafia criminals would cook for her and heal her. Looks like you two are chatting pretty well, don't you? Dating? Julio came down from the stairs, his voice sarcastic. His subordinates quickly denied it. The skinny girl was not his taste, not blonde and hot. Julio called Lihanna up to change. There were clothes in the bedroom. Lihanna asked, dressing? I quite like this shirt, do I have to change it? She wondered what they had taken her clothes for. Julio sighed and said, you can't wear that to go out. Julio's assistant called out to her, Miss, go get dressed. We're going to the funeral. A few minutes later, the limousine quietly left the villa in the shower. They were holding a burial ceremony for their associates who had just been killed by Mesa. The dead partner mourned his comrades, who each placed a branch of white chrysanthemum on the coffin, and bowed their heads in silence as the cart carried the coffin for burial. Lihanna recites a prayer for the deceased, explaining to Julio that it is a prayer of liberation in Korean. The sound of a hurried turn brought them back to the house. Julio sat across from her, waiting for the dish to be brought by professional chefs. Julio didn't take long, asking Lihanna exactly what he wanted from him. Lihanna asks him for 3 things. First, to help her find her younger brother Dewey. Monday? Help her track down the person who attacked her. Third, she needed plates for her meals. 6 orders all his subordinates to leave. Julio also meets her third condition. Lihanna glanced at the knife, and aimed at it as a weapon she needed to steal to defend herself. Julio suddenly stood up, leaning close to her face, to stare intently. I have a very sensitive intelligence network, but I can't find information about you. I think I should warn you, taming wild animals like you is my favorite. As he spoke, Julio put his hand on her neck, squeezing softly, I'll kill animals that only pretend to be tame. Lihanna asked, I understand how you work, so why did you strangle me? Gavin Smith. Julio loosened his hand on Lihanna's neck, but didn't let go. I found your bag near the battle, and saw a video containing his picture. Answer, what relation do you have to Gavin Smith? Lihanna recalled the last image recorded of Dewey, where there was a man with slightly limp legs behind Dewey, presumably Gavin. He's a former FBI agent, and he has a grudge against Julio. Smith tricked Julio into letting him go to war with the Red Mafia, and after that melee, Smith left the FBI and disappeared until he appeared in that video. This information troubled Lihanna. How the hell did that bastard do this to my brother? She tried to remove Julio's slowly clenched hand again. Stop acting. I don't trust anyone, including God. And your brother is involved with someone who spent his life killing me, Julio said. Lihanna angrily used the small knife in front of her, swinging it hard. Julio dodged it, but the blade touched lightly, creating a small wound on his neck. She shouted, enough. Just as much as he cared about his family, I was willing to put my brother's safety before my own. Dewey will never betray the organization. The one I suspect is you, not your brother, Julio said, repeating the main point. I'm not an FBI agent. Lihanna affirmed. I'm Lihanna, a mercenary of Valentine's Day. And my nickname is One. Hell, Lihanna muttered, these annoyances are annoying. I'd rather be an FBI agent. Julio abruptly pushed Lihanna to her feet, pressed her against the wall, and smiled cunningly. The more I know about you, the more interesting I get, to the point of being uncontrollable. Before Lihanna could understand Julio's strange behavior, he pressed his mouth to hers, both tenderly and passionately. Lihanna was confused, trying to push Julio away, taking advantage of the feeling of his tongue entering her mouth, the sweetness and male scent on him being too close. Lihanna's mind returned immediately. She lightning fast stabbed the small eating knife into Julio's shoulder. Julio's gaze deepened. He smiled, contentedly. Do it, stab deeper. His hand lifted her chin, cupping her waist, seemingly oblivious to the bleeding wound. Stop chattering, Lihanna said firmly. I didn't come here to kill you. And now she is bound, both her legs and hands, with specialized iron cuffs. Her subordinates guarded her, her personal doctor bandaging Julio's wounds. He was as if he wasn't in pain, his eyes still staring intently at the girl in front of him, full of amusement. It's better for you to handcuff you. You don't know what I'll do if you dare to run away, Julio warned without blinking. Lehanna calmly said, "Are you sure you'll find Gavin Smith?" Julio said if he tried, he would probably find it. Lehanna asked, "Why would he want to kill you?" And received Julio's casual reply, "I killed his brother." Lehanna was upset, so there was no point in wanting to kill him. "I will treat you like a prisoner, who can be executed at any time, until I see that I can trust you." Lehanna looked around, programming her escape plan. She needed to find her brother right away, there was no time to be their hostage. But just as she glanced at Julio's two subordinates behind her and the side window to get out, the cold barrel of the gun was pointed at her head. "The Mafia are not useless people," Julio's assistant said coldly. "Don't think about it, go back to your room. As long as you are obedient, we will respect you." Lehanna looked at Julio, who was laughing at him. In the study, Julio looked at the pile of items obtained from Lehanna, looked at her portrait for a long time, really beautiful. He remembers feeling the barrel of a gun pointed at his forehead the first time he encountered it in the trunk of a truck. That look of resentment made him feel like he wanted to be freed, wanted her to pull the trigger. Julio tells his assistant that the person they need to find out right now is Kong Mujin, who has a picture on Lehanna's phone. He ordered his subordinates to get Logan's phone number. "Hannah used to work for him," Julio explained. Julio's partner was surprised why she's so dangerous. Julio ended the topic, "We have a lot to learn, and there are many people to kill," and put Lehanna's phone in his pocket. At this time, Lehanna was sitting in her room, impatient and annoyed. They kept locking her up even though she was worried about her brother's safety. And she needed to go to the bathroom right now. Lehanna was handcuffed to both arms and legs, so she couldn't remove her pants to go to the bathroom. Lehanna grumbled loudly, and it made Julio laugh. She snapped at him. "I'm not laughing, but you seem pretty good, can you sleep at all?" "Can I sleep with this?" Lehanna said annoyed, holding up the iron cuffs in his hand. "I promise not to run away, and really need to go to the toilet." Lehanna's feral cat-like temper amused Julio. He bent over, held Hannah's hands on his head, and crushed her on the bed, his deep gaze on her face. "You drive me crazy." Reaching down to remove the pants she was wearing, Lehanna rushed to the toilet to solve her problem. A moment later she came out, in a loose t-shirt, still quite discreet. Julio helped put her at ease by handcuffing her backwards. Lehanna said, "Put your pants back on for me." She restrained her exasperation, telling him, "Have you washed your hands?" He didn't care what she had just said. Lehanna said irritably, "You think I can reach with my hands in handcuffs like that?" Julio smiled, "There's an easier way," said, and moved closer, forcing her back towards the sink. He flushed the faucet, checked it through the temperature, then wrapped his arm around her back, holding her hand under the faucet. As he washed and intertwined her fingers, Lehanna couldn't explain his behavior. She silently felt her breath close to hers. This warm feeling made her doubt her sanity. Julio further sneered, "What? Do you have any parts that need to be washed?" His leg was resting between Lehanna's thighs. Lehanna didn't give in. "I understand you're excited, but frankly, it's quite disheartening." Julio scoffed, "So you like to be shady seductive?" Lehanna snapped, being so close to the flawless face facing her that she was a little confused. "No, I'm not going to do that to you, I still value my life." "That must have been from me, you stabbed me while kissing," laughed Julio. "Who said you strangled me?" "See? There's a trace here," protested Lehanna in exasperation. Julio lifted her chin, watched, and said softly, "It suits you." Lehanna broke out of Julio's arms and walked towards the bed. Julio watched as she lowered her head and turned away. A sudden feeling of loss and fear overwhelmed him. He rushed to hold Lehanna's hand, throwing her onto the bed. Kneeling on his little body wearing only a t-shirt underneath, Julio trembled, his heart rate rising sharply. One hand held up the phone. "If you're obedient, I can give you a gift." "Give it to me, please," Lehanna said hurriedly. But Julio was putting it in his pants pocket, one hand across Lehanna's head. She wasn't in the mood to think about her physical feelings right now. The phone was so important and it was right in front of her eyes. It was the only thing that kept her in touch with Dewey. Lehanna squeezed her legs into Julio's hips, wrestled him down, kissed him on the lips. The phone was thrown on the bed next to Julio's head. She looked up about to reach for it with her mouth, but as soon as she left Julio's face, she was pulled back, Julio continuing to press his lips to hers.